Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome to today to one of the kind of funniest things I've ever seen on Poe.Ninja. I woke up today and I didn't really have this video planned, but I just saw a profile that kind of blew my mind. And as I tell you about the profile, this is pretty much the build that we're talking about, and this is Uber Maven. And instead of using Smite like most armor or stackers do, the person is running Cleave. Now, this is one of the highest DPS archetypes currently. It uses Doriani's prototype, and it takes advantage of aura effect. It stacks a lot of armor, and basically you get around 1 billion DPS if you actually decide to fully... Well, he almost crashed the game because he just did too much damage. And you get around 1 billion DPS if you decide to fully tooltip warrior it and make a meme profile. And the damage is just amazing. And it's so amazing, in fact, that you can have 1 billion DPS with only a 1 link. Now, this is the profile that we're talking about. And as you may know, this is the same person who always does this. It is Jodox. And his name is Jodox Changes Ascendancy. And it's not quite 1 billion. It's 999 million. And it is a Doriani's prototype build. But the nice part about this build and the best part about the build is look at the HP and look at the energy shield. 1337. That's how you know this is probably going to be one of the best builds ever made. So I'm going to go over this build, pretty much talk about what actually gets it so much damage, and if you can actually play this build yourself without such a meme version, and if this is the true way to actually be able to play Cleave. Now, as I said, the ultimate Giga Chad is back. Jodox on a different ascendancy and a skill that got massively buffed. And when I say buffed, I mean massive. If you can see down here, this is the Cleave buff that was given in 3.19.0. Cleave now has +0 to radius at gem level 1, unchanged. Up to 10 at gem level 20, previously +8. Now, you might be thinking this is a bad buff, but this is a 25% buff to the AoE of the skill, right? Cleave is just downright crazy right now. But Armor Stacker is right now abusing the most OP chest in the game, and it has been abusing the most OP chest in the game for a while. And that is Doriani's prototype. Now, I do think you might die to lightning dots still because there's no mitigation for lightning dots on this build. But when you have 1 billion DPS of Cleave with a 1 link, does it really matter that much? Now, as you can see here, the skill is only 1 link, so the damage potential should be much, much higher. Usually each link like doubles your damage or 40 to 50% increase. So you could probably have 5 to 6 billion DPS of Cleave. But he has fully embraced the loot goblin meta. He knows you need 1 item rarity gem for each loot goblin you face because they actually stack. So if you get 4 item rarity gems, you get 280% rarity. So that actually makes a pretty big difference. Now, I'm just trolling. You can't actually stack item rarity gem. This is pretty much a statement to what he thinks about the meta, in that everyone needs to run item rarity and culling strike. And who knows, maybe this will make the best MF culling character ever. Imagine an MF culling character with 1 billion DPS of Cleave. He just comes in, he cleaves the mob once, and then out comes 50, 60, 100 divines or something like that. Now, you might be wondering, how does this build actually get so much damage, and why does it actually do 1 billion DPS without having any links? Now, the main thing is that armor is used to scale the damage due to replica dream feathers. If you look at the replica dream feather over here, you have 1% increased attack damage per 450 armor. And if you look at the profile that I have, and I did transfer it over to PO Path of Building, you will see that you have around 1.6 million armor. And that's a crazy, crazy amount. And it actually equates to around 3,553% increased attack damage per sword. So if you have 2 of these swords, you actually have 7,000% increased damage. And that's 70 times the damage that you would normally do. Now, your aura effect on cluster jewels of introspection and the tree, in terms of charisma, sovereignty, along with iron reflexes, allows him to reach 1.6 million armor. So for people who don't really know what iron reflexes actually do, then this is a node you probably should never, ever be taking unless you're playing armor stacking. And if you take off this node, he loses... This node gives him 238% DPS, and it loses him 70% of his damage. So what this node actually does is it converts all of your evasion rating to armor. So what this means is that this allows you to use grace and determination, and it gives him 1.6 million armor. Without it, he has 276,000 evasion and 420,000 armor. And just to show you how strong Grace is, we can turn off Grace, and the armor goes all the way down to 230,000. So I wonder what gives more, Determination or Grace. Without Determination, he has 524,000. So you can see in this scenario, Grace actually gives more armor than Determination. Now, he has all of this increased attack damage and more damage. So how does he actually scale? Where does he get that base damage from? Well, with this skill, so this build is kind of a little bit of a meme in that you have to smite in order to get your base damage. So without smite, you can see he loses around half of its damage or more. So he has smite right here that gives him a bunch of lightning damage. And you can see where the damage actually comes from when you go on to Path of Building right here. So here you can see March of the Legion. He has 1 to 160 from the enchant. And that's a tiny amount. That's not really that big of a difference. The lightning damage aura Raft gives him around 1752 damage on the top end, and his smite gives him 1490 damage. Now, the reason why this stuff gives so much damage is because all of this gets scaled with aura effect. So his aura effectiveness is effectively scaling his smite, his Raft, and his grace, and his determination. So it's very synergistic in what is going on, and that's how he gets so much flat damage. Now he has all of this increased damage and flat damage, so now he just needs a bunch of more multipliers. And that is pretty much why he's choosing Berserker. Berserker has more multipliers with Berserk, which is like 30% or 20% more damage. And then he has Blitz Charges, which is 40% more attack speed. And lastly, you have Aspect of Carnage, which grants you 40% more damage. So that's a perfect ascendancy in order to get as much damage as possible. Now, next up, you might be wondering what type of tree is he running, and he is running a around the world tree. He's literally traveling halfway across the world in the quest for one thing only, and that is cluster jewels. So he's able to use 1 passive point voices, and this build, even though it is a meme, it is very expensive as 1, 2, 3 1 passive voices. Now you might be wondering, why does he need all these 1 passive voices? Now the reason he needs one of these 1 passive voices is it allows him to use Megalomaniacs. That gives him Introspection. Introspection grants him 10% increased effect of auras. And like we said earlier, the aura effect scales your flat damage, it scales your armor, so that in return scales your percent damage. Now he is pretty much choosing Megalomaniacs that give him something else really good on the second node. So he has Pressure Points or Force Multiplier, which is a double damage node. So these are pretty good. They're just 5.7% damage. And Introspection is around 11% damage. So every single one of these nodes are huge value. And it allows him to scale his armor to truly ridiculous values. And he has another more damage multiplier over here with Evil Eye, just 6% increased damage. And then this one right here is increased effect of your marks. So he does only use 6 Megalomaniacs and 6 Introspections because he is using these medium clusters that grants him increased effect of totems. Now, we will see later on how important increased effect of totems are. So Ancestral Guidance guarantees him around 8.1% DPS. And if you use medium clusters instead of Megalomaniacs, that actually allows you to use these jewels that has triple multi. And in the end, you do need some crit multi as his build is crit. So without these 3 jewels, you'll see here, he's all the way down to 471% multi. And generally, 600% multi is a pretty good sweet spot. So here's another jewel right here that's triple multi. And the reason why he can't get more multi or quad multi is because Cleave is not elemental tagged, so you can't use crit multi with elemental skills or spells. So that's why it's only triple multi jewels. Now, next up, you might be wondering what forbidden jewels is he running, and he is actually running Forbidden Flesh and Flame with Tukuhama's War Herald. And what is so special about Tukuhama's War Herald? It gives you, where is it? It gives you 100% increased effect of your ancestral totems. So what this means is that we can see here, so Cleave is at 5.7 billion DPS, and I did add in the links to, I got rid of the item rarity stuff and gave him real links. So he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total links on Cleave. And let's look at how much Ancestral War Chief gives. Ancestral War Chief is a more damage multiplier with attacks. And this actually gives him 55% damage, so he lost half its damage. Ancestral Protector gives you attack speed with Phantasmal, and he loses around half his damage. So without the 2 totems up, he has only 1.6 billion DPS. So he lost So he's at a quarter of his damage. Now, next up, you will notice that he has this one brutal restraint right here, this little circle. And this thing here is interesting because this allows him to take this one node that he's taking Dance with Death. And what this thing does is it gives you critical strike chances lucky and damage with critical strikes is lucky. Now, this is a huge DPS boost, as we'll see later on, because lucky means that you roll it twice and you take the better outcome. So if you do an attack and you do 1,000 damage, and then you do 20,000 damage, the attack will count as 20,000 instead of 1,000. So that's a pretty big overview. Now, in terms of his gear that he's running, he is running some interesting pieces of gear. Doriani's prototype is, of course, being used to get negative 200% lightning res. The helmet has synthesized implicit, and this allows him to get increased effective auras. Shaper's Touch is used to get increased evasion rating. March of the Legion, you might be wondering why is he using this, and because it actually grants him plus 8 levels into his auras, and you can see here plus 1 level of Socketed Gems, plus 2 of Socketed Aura Gems on the Corruption, and then plus 5 for the item. So what this means is that he is getting around 8 levels to his Grace, Wrath, and Smite. Well, that's why he does so much damage with that. Now, String of Servitude is a nice item because it actually gives him Grace Aura effect and multi. So if you can see right here, 45% increased aura effect and 69% multi. So if you take off this belt, it actually is a 33% damage gain. Now, the thing about this build and why it's kind of different this time around is that if you look at this ring right here, we have negative 117% lightning res and negative 38% lightning res. So this one ring gives him negative 155% lightning res, which allows him to reach negative 200% lightning res for Doriani's prototype in only one item, which is extremely, extremely efficient. Now, lastly, he is using Ashes of the Star, and Ashes of the Star does allow him to use his auras, and it gives you some quality on your gems and more gem levels to Grace, Determination, and Defiance banner, and this gives him a bunch of damage, and I don't know why that just started playing. But overall, you can see his gear. He has a lot of different options, and they're all trying to scale aura effect, gem levels, and trying to get him to negative 200% lightning res so he can take advantage of Doriani's prototype. Now, in terms of the damage scaling, how does he get all this damage? And we did mention how he got most of this damage, and most of it's actually from the increased damage. So if you ever want to take a good breakdown of what is going on with the build, it is always best to go look at the calcs. Now here you can see the different calcs, and this is where the magic happens. Increased damage, 7,338%. Now the reason why this is so high is purely because of Replica Dream Fetter. It is giving him pretty much 3,500% per sword, so he has 7,000% increased damage from that. And that's pretty much because you're using your armor as increased attack damage. Now next up, you have 285% more damage, and that's a crazy amount of more multipliers, because they each get scaled or multiplied on top of each other. And he has 20% from Berserk, 55% from the Ancestral War Chief Totem, 40% from Aspect of Carnage, and then he has 34% from damage on full life, 39% from Conk Effect, and 16% from Frenzy Charges. So he has a bunch of more damage multiplier. Now, next up in the equation is attack rate. His attack rate is nuts, 26 attacks per second with Cleave. Now, this is mainly because of multi-strike and also because of Ancestral Protector Totem. Without the totem, he's all the way down to 12 attacks per second. So what we have learned is that Ancestral Totems are overpowered, especially when you scale the buff effect with the Forbidden Jewels and the Medium Clusters. And that's how a lot of builds get so much damage on Poe.Ninja, is they definitely take advantage of Ancestral Guidance, which is the 30% effect node on the Medium Cluster. And this is a huge, huge damage boost. You can see here it's 70% damage. And next up, you can see he has lucky crits right here, effective critical strike chance, because he's using this one node, Dance with Death, that grants him lucky critical strikes. And all of his elemental penetration comes from Doriani's prototype. So that's pretty much how he gets his damage all the way up to 5.7 billion and 1 billion DPS of a one-link cleave. Now, lastly, you might be wondering, how much is this person actually cheating? And as you have seen throughout the video, he is actually doing reverse cheating, except for one important distinction, which is Dance with Death. Now, what Dance with Death does is it makes it you can't use your helmet. However, Poe.Ninja is bamboozled by this little trick where if you take the note, it still gives you the stats from your helmet. If you see right here, we allocate Dance with Death, we get 71% damage. However, that means we don't have a helmet on, but if we take off the helmet, you can see we still lose damage. So we're still getting the effect of this helmet, but we're also getting the upside of Dance with Death. So this node is kind of bugged on Poe.Ninja. So if you ever want to really flex your DPS on Poe.Ninja, just get this Brutal Restraint, and it's Asenath, so you can get Dance with Death, take the Keystone, and you'll pretty much see your damage skyrocket, and you don't even need to get 100% crit. Now, this person is not really cheating. He's trying to make a meme profile, as I said. He's actually using this one ring over here, negative 177 life. I'm pretty sure in order to reach exactly 1337 life. And he's also using a one link to illustrate the new Loot Goblin meta. But once you put in all of the links, and I did choose the highest links, the damage is somewhere around 5.7 billion. And if he was using a better skill, I could see the skill going all the way up to 10 billion. Now, overall, this profile is pretty much a perfect example of why some people still can enjoy PoE, right? Some people have specific goals in mind when they play PoE. Some people like crafting, and in this person's case, it's stocking up on 1 passive point voices and getting number 1 on Poe.Ninja in the most meme way possible. Now, in the end, every league always results in some type of aura stacker that reaches rank 1 DPS. As you saw last league, this is the same person, and it really just illustrates how strong aura effect is. And the reason why auras are so strong is because it allows you to scale 2 things at once. It's a bunch of more multipliers, and it's a very, very effective way of bringing your damage really high. Now, this league does have some insane potential, as I do think if he really wanted to, he could actually get rings that have insane amounts of elemental damage. But elemental damage wouldn't really scale it that much, because at this point, all he really needs is probably more crit multi, and that's the best way of scaling it, since he has so much increased damage. Any elemental damage with attacks is not really going to do that much. So he probably needs some reflected jewelry with 100% multi, which I do think is possible. But thanks for watching, everyone. I don't really recommend you play this build exactly, but you can play the armor stacker build with Doriani's prototype. It is probably one of the highest scaling builds in the game, and as you saw here, the damage was absurd in terms of how fast it took down Uber Maven, and it's just actually just crazy in how effective the build is. But thank you very much. Thanks for watching. I hope you find more Mirrors, Exalted Orbs, and Mage Bloods than me, and Divine Orbs, and see you next time. Bye!